interviewing my grandfather, John Igoe. So, where do you work?
I work for Google, and I'm responsible for ground up development. So what that means is that all new construction of office buildings or any type of retail or any other type of operation for Google, then that's my responsibility.
Okay. How do you use engineering to lessen the impact of natural disasters?
An excellent question, especially for California. Um, it's a team that you really need. Quite often when people think about buildings and protecting, if you will, from a natural disaster, they don't realize the complexity of actually starting in the ground. So having a very, very good soil mechanics, soil engineer, in conjunction with the structural engineer and the architect are the key members of the team that really make sure that the building is being designed to meet the structural needs of the earthquake zones they're in. And you're probably aware of the fact that there are many earthquake zones in California, and they vary in difference from the standpoint of how likely they are for an earthquake. And the other thing is that depending on the soils, it makes it more susceptible for an earthquake. And we have the situation that happened in San Francisco with regard to the fact that when the grounds were placed, or when the how do I say it, when they destroyed the pavilion from the previous World Fair, they just let it collapse, and so therefore when the earthquake came, it was unstable. So that's a long-winded question, but it's a great long-winded answer, but it's a great question.
Okay. What do you look for when choosing a new location to build?
Actually, what we do, it's more important that the location work for our employees. And so we look for locations that are attractive to be able to hire and retain employees. So therefore, we tend to be in what we call urban districts. We're in San Francisco, we're in all throughout the Bay Area, we're in New York City, we're in London, we're in large metropolitan areas because that's where engineers generally like to work. And so that's how we chose the location. So obviously within that, then you start looking for locations that again have stable ground and that'll work well for new construction.
Okay. How do you plan so that you use natural resources wisely?
The whole it's called sustainability. That's the whole idea here is to try to use materials that are readily available or replicable in nature. And I'll give you an example. Is that for years, the only two options we really had were steel or concrete. Both of those take an awful lot of energy to create. And so therefore, we've been searching, and it's been around for a while, but we've been looking for, is there some way that we can take timber, trees, and optimize their structural value so that in fact we don't have to be limited to steel and concrete. And so concrete is a very good, it can be used for foundations, and that's very nice. But in erecting the upper structure of the buildings, we've been working very, very closely with a lot of the technical institutes to, how do we say, perfect the structural stability of timber. Because to the extent that we can use wood, timber, in erecting higher buildings, we actually can do it quicker and less expensive, and most importantly, very sustainably, because you can then have a growth pattern in your forest to just take down as much timber as you need for being able to handle the construction. And as I say, much less energy consumption than either steel or concrete. Another example, if I may, is that there are so many toxics in the chemicals that are used for carpeting, for fabrics. And so we've been working very, very closely with manufacturers to try and minimize the amount of the, how do I say, I'm just going to use the term unfriendly chemicals that exist in their manufacturing process. And so we've actually worked with some of the universities to create a portico, is what it's called. And think of it this way: is it's a huge area, a huge document that has all of the materials that are manufactured and what their content of chemicals are in each of them, and which particular chemical is in them, so that we can cut down on the amount of chemicals that we're using in the manufacture, but also in the furnishing of offices and houses.
Last question. What new green technology is being used to build structures with less impact on our Earth?
Well, I probably jumped the gun in answering the previous question, but I would say that it's very interesting if you go back to the very beginning of how people lived. What they did is they lived in mud huts. And so think about that, is that mud was everywhere and straw was everywhere, so they could reuse it. And I think that what we're seeing is that more and more we're realizing that if we can use renewable resources that are available to build our structures, again going back to this use of timber, then we're going to be able to constantly being able to renew that resource. It's not just a lost resource of having used up the energy that needed to make the steel or the concrete or whatever else. So more and more I think we're going to see natural materials being incorporated into construction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.